Hey everyone, I'm Michele Dunaway, and I figured I would introduce myself to you in this, my very first Bookview Cafe video on Bookview Cafe's YouTube channel. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you. I have 5 books out right now with Bookview Cafe. They are The Doctor's Little Miracle, they are Bachelor CEO, and then they are my Calendar Heroes series, which is Mr. September, Mr. December, and Mr. July. But today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what inspires me and also how I use real places in my books, specifically with Bachelor CEO and also The Doctor's Little Miracle. So let's get started, shall we? All right, so one of the things you should know is that when I was growing up, my family spent the 4th of July week every single year in a town in northwestern Wisconsin. It's one of my absolute favorite places. I haven't been there in years, but I was able to take my children there before my own parents passed. And we would be basically north of the town of Rice Lake on a little lake called Red Cedar Lake. So shout out to the Isle of Happy Days and Stout Island because you can still go there and visit it today. But I loved Red Cedar Lake. I learned to sail sunfish sailboats there. It was just really calm. And, we canoed, we pontoon boated, we actually water skied, and it was just a really great family time. So the summer home actually belonged to my step grandparents, and so shout out to them. They are long past for just being a very influential part of my life. So I knew that when I wanted to create Bachelor CEO and basically The Doctor's Little Miracle, and I've got Chase McDaniel and then his sister Shandy, I wanted to bring this sort of all-American feeling to the books. So Chase, I put it in a little fictional town called Chenille, Iowa, that I just sort of made up. And I chose Iowa because this book, when I originally wrote it, was buy, buy some raffle tickets and maybe you get to be a character in my book. And so all the English department teachers that I worked with threw in basically all of their tickets in for one of my English teachers, Mike Storm. So Mike Storm gets to be a character in this book. He loves Iowa, and so therefore it had to be set in Iowa. So anyhow, Chase is definitely that all-American boy. He's fine with being a big fish in a small pond. He is prepared to be CEO, except for his grandfather decides he doesn't really have a life and really thinks that he needs to have a roadblock, and that is in the form of Miranda Craig. So she comes into town. He really likes her. He doesn't realize she's going to be vying for his spot. And so we have basically a workplace romance and some enemies to lovers because she is basically a threat to every single thing that he has ever thought that he wanted in his life. So in The Doctor's Little Miracle, one of the things that I wanted to do with this is I wanted to bring the book back to St. Louis, which is my hometown. I've, for the most part, lived here all of my life. I use the settings where I travel in my books, but I'm pretty much very much a hometown girl. And St. Louis is my hometown. I am STL born, STL raised, and STL always. So Shandy, I wanted to have her with her former childhood sweetheart. They just sort of went away and long before social media lost track, lost touch, and have gone on with their lives. Except for when she gets into a car accident, everyone says, you need to take your car here. One of the things you may not know about me is that I have been in something like 17 car accidents. I've been rear-ended now something like 6 or 7 times. I'm literally sitting at a stop sign behind a school bus. It doesn't really matter. In a yield lane, which just happened 2 months ago, and someone just plows into the back of my car. And it's annoying and it's sort of physically problematic because I have to sometimes undergo surgeries and sometimes I actually have to undergo a lot of physical therapy post surgery. So I give Shandy that experience and I take her down to the body shop, which is owned by her former flame. And he's been married, he has a child. She had treated that child in the pediatric ER. I'm a mother. I'm very familiar with pediatric ERs. My girls are grown now, so thankfully not as much, but we spent quite a lot of time there while they were growing up. So I bring in a lot of those experiences into my books because that is what makes them real. That's what makes them relatable to the characters and to the readers. And, that's just my voice and who I am. And so when I created the McDaniels, obviously I got to have a lot of fun with it. I got to use the St. Louis Crisis Nursery, which is a wonderful, wonderful organization, and I highly recommend that you Google it. I got to use something that I knew a lot about, which is body shop work, and I got to dedicate it to the people who are the owners of my favorite body shop. So shout out to Dave at Show Me Auto Body in Pacific, Missouri. That's the only place I take my cars, and I highly recommend it. So anyway, let's get into some of the excitement here. I'm going to read you just a little bit out of both of The Bachelor CEO and The Doctor's Little Miracle to get it started. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts. A reading from Chapter 1, Bachelor CEO. She shouldn't be bending over like that. As he gazed at the woman wearing the short blue pinstripe skirt ahead of him, Chase McDaniel's throat constricted, and his silk tie felt suddenly tight. She leaned over farther, continuing to study the back end of her car. He had a perfect view of well-shaped legs that led upward toward. The bead of sweat that formed on Chase's forehead had nothing to do with the late May heat wave. It might be 92 degrees, but the vision in front of him was what was getting him all hot and bothered. In the company parking lot this Friday morning, she straightened and he noticed how her crisp white shirt clung to her breast, outlining the white cami she wore underneath. She'd said the suit coat and her sunglasses were perched atop her head to keep her short black hair back. She was hot, both literally and physically. He'd never seen a woman quite like her, Chase decided. She had a commanding, yet sexy presence. His libido heightened, and he worked to control his physical reaction. Her car was in the visitor space, and as he approached, he could see what vexed her, a flat tire. It was 10 a.m., and the official start of the Memorial Day weekend was hours away. Here in Chenille, Iowa, the day promised to be a scorcher, but the unseasonably warm weather was ideal for heating lake water and making the weekend perfect for outdoor activities. Chase's grandfather was already at the summer family home in Minnesota, and that's where Chase was heading next, once he stopped and did his good deed for the day. "Hi," he said, pausing a few feet from her. She turned, and he inhaled. She had the greenest eyes he had ever seen. "Hi," she replied. Her frustration with the situation was obvious. "Looks like you have a flat." "You think?" She rubbed her forehead, and dirt from the tire streaked her skin. His fingers itched to wipe the smudge off, but he kept his hands to himself. He liked her on sight, and being up close hadn't done anything to change his mind. "Do you know a repair shop I can call?" she asked, focusing on the matter at hand. "Do you have a spare?" Chase countered. She wrinkled her nose. "I hope so. I've never had to use it, never even looked to see if it's there." He moved to her trunk and noticed her Illinois license plates. Chenille was an hour northwest of Dubuque, which sat on the Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin border. "Where are you from?" "Chicago," she replied, watching as he lifted the trunk lid. "What are you doing?" "Changing your tire." Chase gave her the grin that his sister Shandy declared irresistible. This is the prologue, or part of the prologue actually, to The Doctor's Little Miracle. For Shandy McDaniel, life as she knew it was officially over. She wrapped her arms around her waist and tried to fend off the winter chill that had enveloped Chenille, Iowa, and her heart. She stood on the icy sidewalk, the wet slush from last night's snowstorm soaking through her tennis shoes. She didn't care. Nothing mattered when her 17-year-old heart was breaking. "It's going to be okay. I'll write. Phone, hey, don't cry." Justin McCall, her boyfriend ever since 8th grade, crooked his finger and lifted her chin. You know I love you. Nothing's going to change, even though I'll be in Chicago. I'll come back this summer. That's only 5 months from now. You'll see. Everything will be fine. We'll be together, just like we planned. This is just a detour." Shandy blinked back tears. "It's our senior year. Couldn't you have stayed, finished high school in Chenille?" "You know I wanted to, but my mom said no. She needs me. She can't raise Derek by herself. We wouldn't be going to Chicago if my uncle wasn't there. He's promised to help out." Justin's father had died suddenly of a heart attack, and the small life insurance policy wasn't enough to make ends meet. Despite community support, the situation was dire. Mrs. McCall had been struggling with 12-year-old Derek's behavior, and she had no family nearby to help. The closest was her brother in Chicago. Shandy knew she was being selfish in wanting Justin to stay, but ever since the tall, shaggy-haired jock sitting in front of her in first-hour history class had turned around and pierced her with those baby blue eyes, he'd been the only guy for her. He wrapped his arms around her and then drew back. "Hey, I have something for you. Don't open until Christmas." The holiday was only 4 days away. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small wrapped box. He closed her bare, closed fingers around the present. "Promise me you won't peek." She nodded and fought back tears. "I promise." So there you have it, a couple of pieces from Bachelor CEO and the Doctor's Little Miracle. Thank you so much for hanging with me for this really short video and listening to me talk for just a tad. I will see you again soon. Have a wonderful day and happy reading.